Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through some Week 16 waiver wire pickups.
Hike!
All right, Joe, per usual, we're going through our top five, and our first one is going to be running back Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. Didn't have that many opportunities, but for the opportunities he did have, Joe, he did quite well. 7 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Also 2 targets, 2 catches for 20 yards. Currently rostered in 43% of sleeper leagues. What are your thoughts on Jerome Ford?
Yeah, well, those opportunities I'd expect to continue to increase. Nick Chubb left the game ended up breaking his foot. I would assume that he's going to be out for the season. So that would, mean Jerome Ford would be the guy for these next couple of weeks as you finish up your fantasy playoffs. But he's got the Cincinnati Bengals next week, and then the week after that, the Miami Dolphins. And Ford was pretty explosive in this game. The one touchdown they did have was a long touchdown. So I've always liked Ford. It was just a matter of opportunities and how many of them he was going to get. But the Browns offense has been looking better with Jameis Winston. No, not the best game here with the Chiefs, but I think with a couple of matchups coming up next week, things should be better.
Would you believe that this was his best game from a fantasy production standpoint all year?
I could believe it, yeah.
But to me, that kind of is a testament to him not doing all that well beginning of the year. I mean, Nick Chubb just, returned from injury not too long ago. So it's not like he was all that relevant when Nick Chubb wasn't there before. So what makes you think that all of a sudden he's going to be that relevant going forward? I mean, looks like the most attempts he's ever gotten is 12 attempts. And then the most targets he's gotten is 7. So certainly more involved in the receiving game. As far as the running game, though, most attempts he's gotten is 12. He had 7 against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I feel like he didn't get that many games with, Jameis Winston before Chubb came back. I mean, I think Chubb came back in week 12, so he only played like 2 games that were with Winston and not Deshaun Watson. And obviously the Deshaun Watson offense wasn't very good in the beginning of the year. Ford also got dinged up in the middle of the season there himself. So I think he's back. And I mean, Kansas City's not an easy team to run on. And the fact that he was able to get the explosive run, he looked good off of kickoffs as well. Maybe just the end of the season here, maybe he finishes up strong.
Could it be DTR, though, with Winston getting benched?
It could, but I think they'll go back to Winston, even unless they want to get a look at Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But I mean, Winston had been the guy. I think it was just more indicative that he threw 3 interceptions, and they're just like, let's get him out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say 0 to 5% FAAB if you still have it. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. Next player we're going to be talking about here is tight end Brenton Strange of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Had a breakout game, 12 targets, 11 catches for 73 yards in a tight end landscape that is pretty abysmal, although it has been showing some flashes of late. What's interesting about Strange is that Evan Ingram, I believe it was a forearm injury, out for the year now. So it's going to be Strange the rest of the way. Mac Jones definitely looked his way. He's got Vegas and then the Titans. So pretty easy matchups here coming up. Only roster in 7% of leagues. What say you, Joe?
Yeah, no, I like Strange. I think he's going to be a good pickup this week. I mean, can't ignore the 12 targets, and Mac Jones has actually got this Jaguars offense looking halfway decent. I know he's been getting the ball to the wide receivers, and you mentioned it with Evan Ingram out for the season. We've seen Strange do pretty decent in other games this year. But yeah, 12 targets, and he caught 11 of them for 73 yards, and he's got the Vegas Raiders and the Tennessee Titans over the next couple weeks here.
Yeah, I think I'd be willing to spend up a little more on this guy. Maybe that 5 to 10% range. There's not a lot of options in Jacksonville. And I think he's a borderline tight end 1 maybe the rest of the way. The tight end landscape is pretty difficult to judge, on a week-to-week basis. And with the lack of weapons there, I think Strange, depending on who you have as tight end, could be very valuable ad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Evan Ingram tore his labrum, and that's why he's out for the year.
Okay, thank you for the correction there. The fact checker
No worries.
Came into play. Next play we're going to be talking about here is running back Tyjae Spears, only rostered in 46% of leagues. Only 4 attempts for 5 yards. Did have a rushing touchdown, but then had 7 targets, 6 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. Tyjae Spears this season has not been his best. He has kind of been in and out of the lineup. But this was his best game all year, and it looks like Tony Pollard may be dealing with an ankle injury, and he could be missing some time. Has at Indianapolis and then at Jacksonville, the Titans do. What say you about Tyjae Spears, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're somebody who's got Tony Pollard, I think you got to take a look at this guy and add him at this point. Pollard over the last couple of weeks hasn't been practicing, but he's been playing in the games. He had an okay game, ended up finding the end zone, but, Spears came in. I know, some people might look at it and some of that, receiving stuff was kind of in the game, more so at the end of the game, garbage time. But, hey, that's just where the Tennessee Titans are at. But I do think he's interesting. You mentioned it. He's had a disappointing year, but if he were to get the full workload against the Colts, and if you're in PPR, the receiving game should be where it's at, especially if Mason Rudolph becomes the quarterback going forward over Will Levis.
I would definitely prioritize Spears over Ford. Just feel like there's maybe more happening there. I mean, it was a tough matchup. It was tough weather as well in Cleveland against the Chiefs. But I feel like Spears may have more upside. What do you think over Ford?
Yeah, I think he could. I think there just could be, more opportunities, especially in the receiving game, as you saw this, 6 receptions where, Ford, they don't always, throw it to the running backs as much. So I think the volume for Spears could be more interesting for sure.
Next player we're going to be talking about here is wide receiver Rashod Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens. He had 5 targets, 3 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Only rostered in 27% of leagues. What say you, Joe, about Rashod Bateman?
Yeah, I know we were talking about him. I know he's potentially a boomer bust guy, but I think he's a guy where if you're in a playoff matchup, maybe you're a lower seed, you're going up against one of those higher teams, I think you could just throw him in there and hope that he booms like he did this week against the Giants. I mean, outside of Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, this offense is really looking for somebody to throw the ball to, and they got the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming week. Then after that, they got the Houston Texans, which their secondary you can definitely beat as well. But I think, as long as Lamar has a better game, he didn't play well in the first matchup against Pittsburgh. If Lamar plays better, I think Bateman's got a chance to be a lot better in this game.
Yeah, I'm a little iffy on Bateman, but I think he was a guy who we felt like should be included in our top 5 here for Week 16, just based on what he's a boomer bust play. But if you play him and he booms, then obviously it works out well. So he had 2 touchdowns this past week. The matchups here for Pittsburgh and at Houston aren't that horrible, especially if TJ Watt's going to miss that game. We're still waiting to hear about his injury status at this moment as we're recording here. But I think at the end of the day, he's worth a roster spot, no doubt.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Lamar Jackson had 5 passing touchdowns in this game against the Giants. Derrick Henry disappointed for fantasy owners, but as far as TJ Watt goes, last I heard is he rolled his ankle. I think he'll probably be okay.
All right, so the last player we're going to be talking about here is wide receiver Malik Washington, the rookie from Miami Dolphins. Had 6 targets, 5 catches for 52 yards. Now, we may say, well, why are you talking about him? That's not that impressive. You're not wrong, but Odell Beckham is no longer on the Dolphins. He asked for his release. And then Jalen Waddle got rolled up and looks like he may be dealing with an MCL. Malik Washington is only rostered in 3% of leagues. Joe, what say you on Malik Washington?
Yeah, I definitely think Malik Washington's interesting, especially, if you happen to play a league where you get the receiving yards as well. I mean, he's a returner, can be
returning yards.
Yeah, what did I say? Receiving yards?
Yeah.
Yeah, meant to say returning yards. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you like the Scott Fishbowl, if you get those return yards, he's beneficial there. But you mentioned it, got Odell Beckham getting released. The injury to Jalen Waddle, he went out and didn't come back in the game. So we'll see what his status is. But Malik Washington actually had more yardage than Tyreek Hill in this game. He was only second on the team to Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, and honestly, if it wasn't for the emergence of Jonnu Smith, I think I'd like him even better. But I think that with the Dolphins' playoff hopes kind of dwindling at this point, I do wonder if there might be some more action for Malik Washington. Maybe they want to see him, see if he can be, more of a pivotal part of that offense going forward, especially as how disappointing Jalen Waddle's been in the offense. And Tyreek Hill, I don't say he's necessarily taking a step back, but he obviously isn't performing the way that we're used to with Tyreek Hill, especially even when he was on the Dolphins. So I think this could be a good opportunity for him to shine going forward. And if the Dolphins, decide to mail it in, I think Washington could be a big beneficiary of that. So it is what it is. It's sort of unfortunate, but as you get closer to the end of the year, when teams just become out of it, it's kind of a free for all. It's not a guarantee that these studs are going to play. So he may get some extended looks. So I like Washington. So that does it for this episode. We talked about a few players that you should go and pick up if you're still in the playoffs. This is the time to go get these guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.